start by saying that, despite his quirks, my husband is genuinely sweet and hardworking. I truly believe he loves me deeply, tries his best, and has always dreamed of being a husband and father. That's why this whole situation has left me confused and conflicted. We got pregnant a bit sooner than expected, though it wasn't entirely unplanned. In the first trimester, I was lucky to avoid nausea, but the fatigue hit me hard, especially during my final university exams. I had to nap for 1 or 2 hours every afternoon just to function. At the time, we didn't know that this kind of exhaustion was a normal pregnancy symptom, and I was so focused on school that I didn't think much of it. Meanwhile, my husband quietly started resenting me. He thought I was being lazy because I wasn't keeping up with the homework, which, except for dishes, was mostly my responsibility. Thankfully, a friend asked if I'd been hit by the tiredness and explained that it's normal I rest. He seemed to understand, but I guess it bugs me that faced with his wife being utterly exhausted, his first reaction was to think of me as lazy and be annoyed rather than concerned. Throughout the rest of my pregnancy, his attitude often felt off. He would get annoyed but what I thought were small requests, like bringing me water before bed, and complained about the size of my pregnancy pillow. While he always apologized later on if I let myself get sad about it, I felt like there was something he wasn't saying. Friends told me to enjoy the pregnancy pampering, but I didn't experience any of that. He treated me the same as before and seemed irritated when I couldn't keep up. Despite everything, I had a fairly easy pregnancy physically, and emotionally, I responded very well to the crazy levels of estrogen, making me quite happy and hopeful. I stayed upbeat and tried to be as pleasant and positive as possible. During this time, he started getting really into these man's experiences during pregnancy podcasts and would vent about how no one considers what fathers go through, which I sympathized with. Then came the birth. After a long and sleepless labor, I needed an emergency C-section. I gave birth around midnight, and since partners couldn't stay overnight, he went home. I stayed awake with our newborn for a 4th night in a row. When he returned the next morning, he told me he had fainted on the way home, showing me how dirty his jacket was after falling. I was concerned, but I was so depleted I could barely process it. During our hospital stay, he brought food and held the baby while I slept, but his attitude still felt annoyed. I chalked it up to stress. Then came the newborn phase. Our son was colicky, I was exhausted, and we argued constantly. I couldn't be my usual sweet self and I desperately needed emotional support. He, on the other hand, seemed to want sympathy too. At one point, it had been 5 days since the baby had a bath and he inquired of me annoyed. I didn't turn on my filter and said, "Why don't you give him a bath then?" He responded with that he didn't know and was upset I told him to Google it. He felt overwhelmed working 3 to 4 hours a day and microwaving meals twice daily, so researching baby baths was apparently too much. I ended up taking our baby to all his appointments alone because my husband looked so irritated when tired that nurses started asking questions. I could say a lot more, but here's my main concern. Recently, we revisited the topic of my pregnancy and our son's birth. I told him I felt unsupported during that time. That's when he confessed that he lied about fainting after the birth so I would feel bad for him. He apparently only slipped on the ice. He felt ignored and unimportant during the pregnancy. Every time he talked to friends, they told him to focus on supporting me, and he started to feel invisible. While I understand the desire to feel seen, to lie about something like this when I truly needed support feels deeply hurtful. I explained that being a supportive partner is not meaningless. It's actually a vital, powerful role. He was remorseful, but I don't know if this is expecting too much from him. Things are better between us today, but honestly, I don't think I want him with me the next time I give birth. I feel like it would be easier to mentally prepare for doing it alone than to split my emotional focus between giving birth, the baby, and managing his feelings again. How do we move forward from this? Well, Opie, the first thing I would say is don't have another baby. Your husband is definitely not currently equipped to be a proper partner. He is self-centered and selfish and is definitely not taking care of you and didn't take care of you during your pregnancy and apparently hasn't been a present father to the way that he should be, not just playing with the baby or cuddling with it, but actually taking care of the baby, bathing it, making sure it's properly dressed and fed. So in my opinion, you have two options on moving forward. One, this guy needs to go to therapy. He needs to get his head straight and actually become a man and stop being a child. Or two, you talk about co-parenting and you and your child move on. And honestly, I have to question you. How can you say that your husband is genuinely sweet and hardworking after everything you've also told us? And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section. And now let's check out the community comments. Tamika Olivia says, I don't think he tries his best. I think you're giving him too much credit by claiming he is doing so. He's failing as a father and a husband. He knows this, and yet he does not even care to know how to clean his own child. The man you described in the first paragraph sounds like a fantasy you've superimposed over this unsupportive lying jackass. Hoshi Jones says, he's sweet and loves you deeply. Every single thing you told us in this post says otherwise. He's an uncaring twat with zero empathy and zero concern for your well-being. I don't know why your standards are so low that you consider him a loving man, but you describe him as being outrageously selfish and unloving. Daydreamer 1986 says, he tries his best? Girl, you have got an attention-seeking man-child who wanted to be a father until you got pregnant. After that, all he did is complain. A typical example of someone wanting a baby but having zero clue as to what having a baby or a pregnant partner actually means. The worst thing in your entire post is that you are even thinking of having another child with him. I just can't understand. Please read through your post yourself again. The Batty Witch says, every one of these starts with, I just want to say my hubby is generally awesome and super supportive. And then it's paragraphs of just how awful, unsupportive, selfish, and mean the husband is. I think it's almost second nature for us to not want to see our partners as bad people, because why would we be in a relationship with bad people? But your husband isn't nice, he wasn't caring, he isn't supportive, and you have a valid reason to feel like he wasn't there for you. And Coda Day Love says, my ex was like this. If some action didn't have an immediate payoff for him, he moaned and complained. He went straight back to work after the baby was born, despite his boss telling him to take a month off. Then, he got tired of the baby getting all the attention, so he had an affair. Divorcing him was quite exhilarating, especially since his affair partner dumped him as soon as he told her I had filed for divorce. Boo-hoo, wah wah wah, poor me. Your husband sounds selfish and entitled. Try counseling, but also go to solo counseling for yourself. The fact that the only housework he does is dishes is very telling. You can expect to be the only adult in the room for the next 18 years. Well, the community agrees. The way OP sees her partner is definitely not the way she's describing it in the post, and they're giving her some things to think about. So now let's move on to the update that is 10 months after the original post. It's been almost a year, so I thought I'd give an update in case anyone is wondering. First, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment, message me, or simply read and reflect on the post. When I wrote the original post, I was in a very poor postpartum mental state and felt lost and extremely lonely. Seeing people even care a little bit made me feel less alone and reflect more on my own self-worth. I also want to mention that I don't think I properly explained our situation or what my husband was doing all day. I left out some details to keep the original post short and readable. Both my husband and I were incredibly sleep deprived at the time, and I wasn't fully aware of or able to process how difficult our situation really was. Our son had colic and needed to be fed up to 15 times a day, exclusively breastfed, and held almost constantly, day and night. We slept in shifts, but neither of us were getting proper sleep. In our country, the cause behind colic is never investigated unless you pay out of pocket and go to a private hospital, so the nurses and doctors brushed us completely off. There was also a misunderstanding about my husband's work. The company he works for is very stingy with hours. He has to report his active work in 15-minute increments and only gets paid for those. However, because of time zone differences, he spends a lot of time preparing for work and staying available for messages. Because he was often hovering around his computer, I felt like he was working and unavailable to help for 7 to 11 hours a day. In reality, that usually added up to only 4 to 5 hours of paid work. In between tasks, meetings, and waiting for messages, he would do dishes, take care of the dog, grocery shop, and change diapers. On top of that, we were also dealing with visa troubles, a mistake the immigration department made, which meant we had to spend a lot of time and money on lawyer visits, reapplying, and gathering documents. That said, this doesn't excuse his behavior. The response to original post definitely turned into quite a choral demand of divorce. So let me start off by saying we are still married and things did indeed work out. A few days after I made the original post, one of our fights escalated to the point where I left to stay with my grandma for a couple of nights. That seemed to trigger my husband to realize he could potentially lose us. About a week later, he found the post and confronted me about it. Initially, he was very upset because he felt completely misrepresented, but it also led him to reflect on himself. We spent a lot of time talking about our relationship, reading relationship advice and books together, praying together, and reflecting on the past. Around the start of summer, we all started sleeping a little better, which made us more functional and relaxed. He understood that if the way I described things in the original post was truly how I viewed him and our lives, then he needed to change, and slowly he did. We also moved to a quieter environment, and as I started to manage motherhood better and regained some brain capacity, our communication improved a lot. One of the biggest changes for me after having our child was realizing that I no longer had the capacity to manage or be responsible for my husband's emotions. He is responsible for himself, and I stopped making excuses for him or making up for his shortcomings or shove everything under the carpet like my family tends to do. In other words, I became much more blunt in our conversations and stood up for my opinions more clearly. This helped us establish our expectations, how we view and show love, and how we divide work and responsibilities within our marriage. At the same time, he learned that his goal shouldn't be to keep the peace at all times and avoid tough conversations in order to spare my emotions. To add more context, he was also dealing with a pretty serious depressive episode that he was hiding while I was pregnant. At the time, he was actually working around 10 to 11 hours a day, which contributed to him building up resentment toward me and struggling to show compassion or affection. Even though this year has probably been the most difficult year of my life, and I grew up severely neglected for reference, it still feels worth it in the end. Now, he is a great dad and husband. He gets excited about our child's milestones and growing interests. He lets me sleep in when he can, takes the brunt of the night wake-ups, helps plan and prepare baby meals, and makes an excellent effort to be thoughtful and considerate. He really tries to listen to me, and he feels much more like the man I first met and fell in love with. I'm still struggling with low self-worth, and I still find it hard to ask for simple favors. I think, however, discovering Mr. Rogers while watching it with the kiddo has actually been helping a bit. And while we still quarrel, all our arguments finally tend to resolve calmly and in a timely way. After the long visa dispute and all the immigration lawyer and application costs, we unfortunately don't have the money for individual therapy or couples counseling right now, but it's something we both want to pursue as soon as we have a bit more financial stability. Anyway, thank you for reading all of this. Philippi, you're not out of the woods yet, but you're definitely well on your way. I think it's great that he finally gained perspective and made the appropriate changes. Yeah, he's still working on them, but he's working on them. He's not negating them or trying to hide them or just blame them on you. I think that's a big positive step, so here's wishing you both the best in the future. Take care, OP, and thanks for sharing. And now let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user IntelligentTarot9182. Am I the a-hole for fanning myself during a consultation at the hospital? My boyfriend and I were at the hospital today for a checkup on an injury I sustained a couple of weeks ago. The rooms in this hospital had no air conditioning and no window, and the waiting room was pretty crowded. So I used some papers to quietly fan myself. I made sure I wasn't making any rustling noises because it was very quiet. When we got to the doctor's office, the temperature was the same, so I continued to fan myself while demonstrating my process on healing my injury. I found I was very attentive and chatty, made small talk, etc. In other words, I didn't think I was being rude at all, but I noticed my boyfriend giving me weird looks throughout. When we got out of the office, he immediately told me it was very rude of me to fan myself while talking to the doctor. Now, I'm a Canadian living in Europe, so maybe this is a cultural thing, but all I could think was, in what world is that rude? I was smiling, talking, and listening the whole time. To me, it's just an absent-minded gesture, and it wasn't distracting from the consultation. Doctor himself didn't even look like he noticed or cared. Am I the a-hole? No, OP, you're not the a-hole. What do you mean disrespectful to the doctor? It's not like you were doing, hand gestures or anything like that. You were fanning yourself because you were hot. Were you supposed to curtsy or something like that because the doctor? I don't know what your boyfriend is thinking about. No, you're not the a-hole. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section. And now let's check out the community comments. Purple Emotional 1401 says, not the a-hole. Your boyfriend is either overly sensitive or is looking for excuses to control you. Self-fanning is absolutely not a thing to be concerned about anywhere in Europe. Ocean Isitl says, not the a-hole. Wait until you get menopausal. I'm from the UK and was out for dinner with a load of American male colleagues in New York. I'd ordered curried scallops and as per usual, as soon as the food came out, I had a hot flush. I was fanning myself to cool down and one of the guys said, "Oh, is the food hot?" I replied, "No, it's the menopause." Cue all the men at the table going completely silent. Lol. B Environmental 6299 says, if fanning yourself in front of other people is considered rude, then millions of women going through menopause and have hot flashes have been rude for eternity. Your boyfriend's a jerk. Don't listen to him. And Dopey responds, knowing my boyfriend, he'd probably say that's a valid excuse to fan oneself, but me being sensitive to heat, especially compared to average French person, isn't. And Few Recognition 1788 says, not the a-hole. Does he often criticize you and pick fights over nonsense? And Dopey responds, I just remember an incident from the other day that pretty much sums up his problems with me. We were hiking with his sister, who I get along with pretty well. I was chatting with them both, but after a while, I zoned out a bit and walked a couple of paces behind them. Recording birds. I'm a bird watcher. My boyfriend didn't mention anything until that night, when he told me I had ignored them and went off by myself as usual. I told him I had been talking to his sister and I'd been perfectly happy. I just took a break from the conversation to record some birds. His sister didn't seem to care at all. Well, the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole and it sounds like the boyfriend is just a controlling idiot. So now let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. I asked him to apologize and explained why I felt it was unreasonable to tell me it was really rude. He defended himself and refused to apologize, saying, "You're acting like I humiliated you or told you off, and all I did was let you know it could be a little rude in my opinion. If you don't share that opinion, I don't care." I said, "That's not what you said. You said, that's so rude," as if it was the truth and I had been an a-hole. After 15 minutes of reiterating how it made me feel, I demanded an apology. He half-assed it, and I asked if he meant it. He hesitated, then pretty much went, "Pff, yeah," and I went to sleep on the couch away from him. I'm absolutely furious. Well, OP, now I'd say you're definitely looking at a red flag, so I think you need to take that into account, and your boyfriend is on the fast track to being single in my opinion. So here's wishing you the best, OP. Your boyfriend sucks. Take care and thanks for sharing. This post is from the subreddit Petty Revenge and it's by user Neodia. It took a week, but I'm rather pleased with the outcome. A little background. I have had my email address since Gmail was invite only, so longer than many reading this have probably been alive. The days of dial-up modems. That said, I have no patience anymore for someone using my email as theirs for other sites, services, or whatever. I've been through the, hey, stop using my email address, and being ignored enough times, I will just F with anything they have sent via any services, appointments, subscriptions, etc. if I can. I started getting a lot, and I mean a lot, of email from a betting site. Looking at them, seems was probably an app and they were winning a couple hundred a day of winnings. God only knows how much they spent to make that much. So I contacted the company and was like, this is my email and I haven't signed up for your site. Some back and forth, them asking for info to confirm it's my account, my only giving them enough info to show it's not mine, but my email is being used as contact and thus spamming my inbox. And today, got an email back. My account has been permanently closed for suspicious activity. Works for me. Wasn't my account with them, but was my email. F whoever you were. Use your own damned email for crap and make a new one somewhere. Yep, OP, fantastic. And I wouldn't call it petty. I would just call it fair. Thanks for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out. So here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.